Hello and hello and I. Alright, so today's video, I feel like when I'm speaking on Neanderthals and the hybrids, etc., people might be hyper focused on the European side of things, and that's why I say Eurasian populations, right? Because it's not just white Europeans, but it's the white Asians as well, okay? So, and that's why I say things like pale races, etc. So this time we're going to be focusing a little bit on the Asian side of things. So, and basically the founding fathers, yeah? The founding fathers of these bloodlines. Because when you come out of Africa, right, with non-Africans, they all seem to, their lineages and their ancestry all seem to align and all linked to these specific founding fathers, okay? And this is all across Eurasia, not just in Europe. You know, I already did a video before speaking about, well, on TikTok, I believe it, and I spoke a lot about the fact that when you look at a lot of white people's ancestry, they seem to have the same, like, that's why they all say they're related to kings and queens and all of this stuff, or blah, 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 yeah? Anywho, so we're going to be talking about Gazets, I can never say this guy's name right, Genghis Khan, yeah? And he's Y haplotype, and it's basically how he is responsible for millions of Asians' ancestry today. And it's not just him, there's other groups as well, okay? Other founding fathers, and we're going to be touching on them as well. All right? So enough of this spiel and all of that jazz. Let's get into it. So, around 8% of Central Asian men, so about 16 million, yeah, carry nearly identical Y-chromosomes. And Y-chromosomes, that's the male, so the father side, yeah? Now, that lineage traces back to 800 to 1,000 years ago. And you're going to see that number come up, yeah? What you're going to notice is, when it comes to the reset populations, so the pale races, you'll notice that they all seem to pop up, yeah? Things always seem to happen in the same timeline periods. And it doesn't make sense, It doesn't make sense. Why is it always the same dates? like, be for real, yeah? All right. So the official story is Genghis Khan and his sons had huge harems and raped or ruled so widely that their Y line exploded. So the father line, yeah? The male lineage. But this is the weirdness, right? It's too uniform and it's too fast. And you're going to hear me say these words a lot of the time because it's always too uniform and it's too fast. Even with harems, you'd expect branching, mutations, and a little variation. Instead, it's eerily clonal, like it came from a very narrow founder stock that was somehow supercharged. Now, Khan isn't the only one. Similar Y super lineages pop up in Ireland, so with the Yule Nil, and China and the Middle East. This suggests a patterned phenomenon, not just one freak case. Because everyone is always talking about Genghis Khan. But they're not speaking about the others. And if they put as much light on the others, it would clearly show more of a pattern. But people ain't putting two and two together. They're not putting two and two together, darling. Now, the Khan cluster appears right after a period of massive upheaval in Eurasia. Famine, plague, climate shocks, and you'll find that a lot, right? These reset populations always seem to enter just after madness, mud floods, etc. Like it's always something that seems to have wiped out the previous population, and then somehow, guess who's there ready to take over? Right on cue. I'm being a neek, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, let's get very excited about this stuff, guys. Like, I'm passionate. So, that would be the perfect time to reset populations with a new dominant lineage. Instead of a random man's natural fertility, you would use controlled breeding or cloning style replication of male lineages, okay? So this is how, for instance, how an engineered rollout would look, okay? It would, so like I said, instead of a random man's natural fertility, you would use controlled breeding or cloning style replication of male lineages. So these are examples, yeah? So when it comes to artificial seeding, using a very narrow group of male lineages implanted or reproduced across many women simultaneously, almost like artificial insemination before its time. Clonal bottleneck, deliberately wiping out rival Y lines through war, plague, sterilization, or systematic culling. So only one approved lineage can rebound. Now, dynastic engineering, installing a single bloodline as rulers across multiple regions, then ensuring only their sons inherit wives, harems, and land, locking out all rival males from reproduction. All right, so those are the 3 ways that you can roll it out, and how it would look like engineered. Okay, so the result is the same exact genetic footprint we see. A huge population carrying an almost copy and paste Y chromosome, very weird, with all rival diversity erased in just a few centuries, also very weird. And the reason why I say these things are very weird, because obviously we live in an age now where things have changed, innit? Like the new races, like where you know, laying with them, we've got families, all of this stuff, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like we're looking up to them, they're the leaders of everything, all of this stuff. But you need to remember that their ancestors, like our people, them were not dealing with them. They weren't effing with them. Do you understand? Like people were building up walls and that to protect them from them. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, so just understand that when I'm speaking these things, I know it must be hard to comprehend, like how can being pale be anything negative, right? Because we've been taught to idolize pale. Remember, white is light, white is right, yeah? And all of that jazz. Bearing in mind, black is only black because it holds all colors. I shouldn't even say only ever before black. Never. That should be a sin in itself. But do you understand what I'm saying to you? So when I'm speaking these things, you might be thinking, oh, how can you be talking about engineering, blah, blah, blah. But if you just look at the science and you look at the history, something in your head must be able to think like, rah, it actually doesn't make sense that all these pale races popped out of nowhere. Like something, but because you man ain't digging, some of you, obviously the people that are here already know, you know what I mean? You're deep in the dunya with me. Shit, I hope we make our way out. Well, actually, we already made it out. Them men are still deep, but you know what I mean? Hopefully, you get me? They climb out. Anyway, moving on. So, why this feels engineered? Because it looks exactly like someone said, this is the male template, pale man. Then spread it across millions by suppressing every other competing male line. That could be dressed up as a conquest, which is obviously the polite story, but the uniformity, speed, and scale really does resemble directed genetic management, whether via old world cloning equivalents, mass forced seeding, selective breeding, or artificial bottlenecks, or some system of population engineering we don't have a modern label for. Okay, and before you don't ask me about like where am I reading for, I'm already writing my next book. Like oh, and I want to say thank you. Oh my god, I should have said that first, guys. My bad. Shout out to all you lots that have. I know you lots are asking about where I'm reading from and my research and all of this stuff and my theories and like obviously it feels good to know. It feels good to know that you lots are actually interested in the same stuff that I'm into and actually value my opinion and value my research and like value the information that I'm bringing out there. Like you lots have really shown me love. So shout out to everybody that's bought the ebook so far. Like I'm actually so gassed. That's why I'm already writing another, because I'm just like I've got so much information and yeah, like I've got my community in it. So yeah, we got you. This is what's wild. Bisou. Sorry about that little off break, but I had to. Okay, now, so in plain truth, the Khan haplotype explosion does not, have to mean mass rape. It doesn't, all right? It could also be deliberate genetic rollout, systematic suppression of rival lineages, or even ancient engineering techniques that mimicked what we would call cloning today. So one Y line stamped into millions, yeah? Now, you don't actually need him to personally impregnate thousands of women, right? So Genghis Khan, he's Y chromosome to whatever, it doesn't actually need it to be himself impregnating, yeah? You need a small first cohort of reproducing sons, so tens, not thousands, plus a sustained male lineage line advantage, so more wives, higher son survival, rivals suppressed for several generations. Okay, so already, even when I'm picking back the layers and I'm saying, all right, let's take away rape, yeah? Already you can see the things that would be required for that Y chromosome to be spread across millions of people still requires some form of engineering, some form of influence, of intervention. It can't happen naturally. Even us Africans, for all we are, like, how comes we've never had that? Why are these, like, Y chromosome, like these founding fathers, always found outside in Eurasia? Why? Anyways, so remember, only some births are sons. Only some sons survive and reproduce. So a rough realistic path, yeah. So if we're talking about being engineered or cloning, like, yeah, all we'll need is to start with just a handful of male founders. So Genghis plus 2 or 3 key sons. Systematically suppress rival Y lines through conquest, law, and seed your line wildly. So harems, dynastic marriages, institutionalized polygyny for 5 to 10 generations, and keep this Y line, then it can taper, okay? So the outcome is a near clonal Y signature across tens of millions in 1,000 years. But like I said, still, yeah, even if we're going to go by that theory, and the reason why I'm mentioning this theory, right, is because I want us to break it down and get you to see that even when I'm trying to be kind with it, it still doesn't make sense, okay? How on earth are you supposed to? So remember, it's the same Y chromosome, so they all link back, and as recent as 1,000 years. It's really weird. How the hell are you, man, all linking back to the same father 1,000 years ago? And it is Genghis Khan, so it's not Genghis Khan and his 2 to 3 sons. So that's why I'm saying that theory is void, null and void already, right? Because it's Genghis Khan's Y chromosome, so his lineage that is passed down, okay? Not his sons, because remember, his son will have a different Y chromosome to him. Like, he's Y, because even though, yes, you pass it down, etc., but his son still has half of his mother, yeah? So that's why, yeah, the theory could work if there's a bit of variation, but the fact that Y chromosome is so uniform across those millions shows that it's clearly nothing to do with the sons, but it's Genghis Khan himself. But how can he, like I said, be responsible? Do you know how many people he would have had to get pregnant and for them to survive in those times 1,000 years ago, those babies? But they were popping out, all these reset populations popping out with babies, the cabbage patch babies, the incubator babies, all those photographs in olden days showing kids, hundreds of kids, all looking bare uniform alike. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Yeah? So to reach 16 million male line descendants in 30 to 33 generations, you don't need him personally with thousands of successful conceptions, okay? You need dozens of his reproducing sons to exist early, and then a structural advantage, so polygyny, status, or suppression of rivals. That keeps the average reproducing sons per male above 1.3 for long enough. But when you obviously translate it to women, on the order of a few dozen to low hundreds, okay, that's what he would need, of women bearing his children across years, plus many more women bearing children to his sons, grandsons, is sufficient to produce today's scale. But So see what I'm saying? Even if I take out the engineered, at the best, this is the best theory. So without removing the engineering thing, this is the best theory we've got. And when you hear that theory, does that really sound normal? 1,000 years ago, how did you manage to pattern all the men, dead off all the men, and tell them that you lots can't breed with the women, we're only impregnate? What? How can it would have to be just a few guys, like it said, Genghis Khan and his 2 to 3 sons. That's 4 men with a bag of other men, and you're telling about pussy, about pussy? I don't know. And it's not like, you know what I mean, like I'm not trying to whatever, you know, because men are men everywhere. Obviously there's good men about. Shout out to the good men, come on, because I know you lot say what should have that. I'm not talking about you, but what I'm trying to say is, it's not like Asian men or Asian countries or whatever, they move like bear, and as if to say, do you get what I mean? Like they move like they don't want pananis or all of this stuff. It's clearly not that thing. So how on earth are you telling me that there's this one man and he's 3 sons or whatever? Because remember, the numbers, the figures have to match, right? That's why it says 1 and 2 or 3 sons. Okay, how are you gonna tell me that they was running everything and we're chopping all the gal, impregnating all the gal for years? Okay. All right. Now, the engineered or cloning-like effect. Instead of natural harems, imagine the empire systematically ensures that only Khan line males can reproduce legally or structurally through law, religion, or social engineering. That would mean any woman in the empire who reproduces is effectively carrying the Khan Y line forward. This feels more like the population engineering than rape, okay? So this is the population engineering in terms of like, population engineering is not what I mean by cloning engineering, yeah? So the population engineering would be this 3 that I've just said. Now, so in raw numbers, Genghis personally may have needed on the order of 100 women over a lifetime to seed his first cohort. But the real multiplier came from his sons, grandsons, and great-grandsons, who had hundreds of thousands of women between them. Altogether, across 3 to 4 generations, probably a few thousand women total seeded the line that now includes millions of men today, okay? However, why it looks clonal, yeah? Why does it look like clone things? Normally, that's my little drum thing, yeah? Y-chromosomes diversify as mutations accumulate, but the Khan haplotype looks almost copy-paste across millions of men. So that suggests suppression of rival male lines, so wars, massacres, outlawing other dynasties, extremely rapid expansion, not enough time for much mutation, possibly structured breeding policies, dynastic males placed everywhere, marrying local elites and producing heirs. This is why some researchers quietly call it the star cluster anomaly. It's too clean for just random chance. Now, these are the uncomfortable questions, yeah? So, like I said, he didn't, like with this theory, he didn't have to personally rape or impregnate thousands. He needed to father a critical mass of sons, and then the system of conquest, polygyny, and dynastic expansion spread their Y chromosome like wildfire. Within 200 to 300 years, the entire the empire has effectively stamped his Y DNA across Eurasia. And because rival male lines were killed, his line became the only surviving one in huge territories. Okay? Now, how does that theory sit with you? Because like I said, this is what the science is showing, right? And this is me explaining it in a way that I know that people will try and combat me, because I'm trying to say it makes no sense. I don't care how whatever power people want to say. Even when the slavery things and whatever was happening, and then when they had the whole world colonized, which they still do till this day. But you know what I mean, when it was in the proper trenches times, yeah. How comes there wasn't a spread of Y haplogroups then? Do you get what I mean? Like with all the, so for me it makes no sense unless, like I said, unless they were rolling out like that clone, like for it to be in millions of men today, guys, like to me it just doesn't make any sense. Like, how can you truly, do you know how big Genghis Khan's area was as well? Do you know? So why would it only be his sons as well? How could he control almost half a continent, guys? How could he control almost half a continent? Anyway, yeah, but I'm giving you the theories, yeah? So, giving you the backstory. Now, that's why today we see a clone-like Y-line across 16 million men. It's not one man slept with half of Asia. It's one bloodline engineered to dominate reproduction across multiple generations. All right? So, this is actually not unique. There are several other Y-DNA super lineages that exploded outside of Africa. Yeah, again, always outside of Africa. And they all follow the same strange pattern. One man or dynasty's Y-chromosomes suddenly account for a huge slice of a population. So here are some of the biggest ones. So Y'Neill dynasty in Ireland, yeah? Now this one, like, I was even shocked because I had no idea. I knew about Genghis Khan, but I had no idea. I knew about the European ones, but I had no idea about Ireland. Well, the British and French and they ones. So around 20% of Irishmen in Northwest Ireland, yeah, carry the same Y haplotype. Guys, do you know how much? Like, I need you to understand. Like, so most of this is what I'm trying to say. For people when it comes to Eurasians, most of you man are still basically committing incest. Like, it's wild. If you're not supposed to be as ancient as you are now, I promise you that's not supposed to be a thing. You're not supposed to be sharing Y haplotype with people who aren't your siblings, my brother. Very strange, guys. Who aren't in your immediate family. Why are you sharing Y haplotype groups with people that aren't in your immediate family? Or at least, do you know what I mean? Family. Anyway, it traces back to, guess when? It traces back to about 1,500 years ago, yeah? To Nile, and I bet they've stretched that timeline as well. But it's just so strange that it's always in those years, yeah? From 2000 to 1,000, yeah? It's always like things were popping off. We're popping off in them times. And the 1800s as well. 1700s as well, them times, but yeah. So basically from the 2000 to 1500s, I'll say, popping off times. Reset populations everywhere. Now, it's the same star cluster effect. One elite clan monopolized reproduction in their region. With the Chinese imperial, the Manchu clusters. In northeast China, a huge proportion of men trace back to a few Manchu or Han dynasties. Yeah. For example, and this is how they whitened everyone. Yeah. This is how. I don't know what they did to the original people, but this is how entire continents turned white overnight. Okay. It wasn't like your whole appearance is based off of violence. We appeared one with the sun, I know. Didn't have to force our way, didn't have to do nothing. Do you understand? We appeared one with the sun. Our existence ain't got nothing to do with it. Pale races, their whole existence is just based off of violence. From the jump. From the get-go. Very strange. Very strange. For example, a star cluster in Northeast Asia dates to 1,000 years ago. And may represent the founder of the I don't know if it's Qing, because it's a king, it's Qing, but I just say the Qing Dynasty, yeah, the Qing Dynasty elite. Again, tied to if I've been saying it wrong this whole time, guys, allow me, yeah. Again, tied to imperial harems, conquest, and elite seeding. Now the Middle East, yeah, the Sayyid or Sharif lines, millions of men in the Middle East. Say, well, they do claim they're obviously descendants from the Prophet Muhammad, or related dynasties. Genetic studies actually show, though, this is the funniest thing, genetic studies show large Y haplotype clusters that match these medieval lineages. So yet again, around the 1,000 to 1,500 mark. Again, guys, yeah? Whether or not every claim is real, obviously, I don't know, yeah. But the pattern is there. One medieval male line dominating. So I don't know who, obviously, do you know what I mean? They say Muhammad, whatever, but you know, I don't really do with the whole fairy tale books and whatnot. By fairy tale books, I mean religious books, whatever. Even though I do study them because there's a lot of information in there, but I study them as research, not as like, bro, like this is the book that God wrote and da 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 da. Like, no, sorry. Okay, Iona is I. Iona is I. And what do I mean by that? I is I. The God that you seek is within I. Just like the God that I seek is within I too. I. Alright. So, Central Asia, besides Kenya, there's also the so-called Chigin-Sid star cluster in Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan, sometimes called the Super Y. Another cluster traces to a Turkic warlord. The English, yeah? My God. Another cluster traces to a Turkic warlord 2,000 years ago. These are separate from Genghis, but show the same sudden expansion. What's weird about all of them is they all arise outside of Africa. They all coincide with empires, war, resets, or religious institutions. They all look almost clonal in their Y DNA, spread very little variation, just like a copy and paste lineage. Very strange, guys. Now, Africa, despite being the oldest and most fertile, does not show this pattern. Its Y lineages are far more diverse, none swallowing millions in a few centuries. And this is the issue, right? It's so recent. Why are you man all sharing the same father lineages recently? And it's never the mother lineages as well, which is always weird to me. Why is it the men? Huh? Why is it the men? And remember, when it came to the Neanderthal hybrids, what did they say about the Neanderthal hybrids? The Neanderthals, the actual full Neanderthals that they say made with the Homo sapiens. What did they say about them? They say that it was only the Neanderthal men that were able to reproduce the African women, right? So I don't know. I don't know, guys. It's all mad. Okay? The Northeast Asia Super Y cluster. Genetic studies, so for instance, within the Shi-Yan et al. 2003 and the Barlesqui et al. 2015. So check that out, yeah. This is where I'm getting this info from. Found a Y chromosome haplotype in Manchu, Han Chinese, Koreans, and Mongolic groups that expanded about 1,000 years ago. Yet again, very strange. It's estimated to account for 1.5 to 2% of all men in China today. In raw numbers, that's 20 to 30 million men carrying essentially the same Y lineage. You men are all fucking your cousins and your people then, bro. How? If you men are Asian, as you want to say. If you racist, like, what's going on, guys? And anyone that like proper understands science and genetics and all of this stuff, yeah, like will understand why I'm getting frustrated like this, because it does not make sense, guys. It does not make sense. It should not be happening. It should not be. There should be way more higher diversity. The only way it should be happening like that is if what? Is if these men popped up very recently. Very recently. So like I said, within like 1,000 years, etc. But it's like they keep popping up in groups. Yeah, like these, you have these, like these resets. It's like they need they need injection. Yeah, like they constantly need a population boom. It's like they decline, and then something happens, and then all of a sudden, popping up in history. All right, so the timing matches the rise of the Jurikhan Manchu ruling clans in Northeast China. Later, the Qing Dynasty, which ruled from 1644 to 1912. Like Genghis Khan's empire, the emperor and princes had huge harems and marriage monopolies. This ensured their Y-line spread massively while suppressing rivals. And this is another thing that I was going to think. Perhaps this is exactly the reason as to why in Eurasia... Ooh, sorry. Falling off my stool there. This is exactly why in Eurasian populations, there's a lot of... I feel like there's a lot of mutations, etc. Because they don't have enough genetic diversity, meaning you man are fucking your fucking relatives, bro. That's why all of these things pop up. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? There's not enough genetic diversity between. Now, how it compares. Genghis Khan's haplotype is responsible for 16 million men. The Manchu or Qing cluster is responsible for 20 to 30 million men. The Unil Island is responsible for 3 million men. Middle Eastern Sharif or Sa'id clusters, tens of millions combined. So, the Manchu Chinese imperial cluster is at least as big as Khan's, maybe bigger. It's another example of dynasty Y-chromosome being copy-pasted across millions of men, but again, outside of Africa. All of these super lineages that exploded in the last 1,000 to 1,500 years don't just appear as random Y-chromosomes. When researchers zoom in on them, they carry the same mixed ancestry signature. Okay? A Y line rooted in Eurasian haplogroups, so the C, O, R1A, R1B, and Q, etc., that already contain Neanderthal fragments. Strange that the only time in history, as Africans, we've been here for 315,000 years. Way more, guys. Way more. But obviously, they only use fossils to count our age. When it comes to their age, they use computer models because they ain't got fossils old enough. Because if they was to use bones like they use our bones, even though they say Eurasia, you can keep bones and fossils in a much better place, and they say hot climate degrades bones and all of this stuff. Yet they rely on Africa to produce bones to show how old we are and refuse to use our DNA, because if they used our DNA like they use theirs and use computer models or whatever, they would find out that we are, I promise you, millions of years old. Our genetics go back that far back. But these man, we use computer models with them. They won't bring out the bones. Why can't you bring out the bones? You lot's when Eurasia was colder, right? Better fossil preservation, right? Can't bring out your bones. Can't bring out your bones. Where are they? Because if we use your bones, we would find out that you're so recent. All right. Now, paired with X chromosome or autosomal ancestry, that's clearly Homo sapiens derived. Why? It's weird. The hybrid signature repeats. Every one of those super lineages looks like it's sitting right at the junction of archaic introgression, so Neanderthal or Denisovan and sapiens. The R1, which is the Europe or steppe, Neanderthal plus sapiens. C and Q, Mongols and Central Asia, is the same. So they've got the Neanderthal plus sapiens. And when we say sapiens, you already know it. African, yeah? And then you've got the O, which is China, Southeast Asia, which is exactly the same. Neanderthal and Homo sapiens. They all explode in the same historical window. Strange. Unil in Ireland, 1,500 years ago. Genghis Khan, 800 years ago. Manchu Qing, 1,500 years ago. Middle Eastern Sharif or Sa'id, 1,000 to 1,200 years ago. And what's funny about this, guys, is obviously Asia's always had such a big population, right? Everyone's always talking about, Asia, there's more people in Asia, there's more people in Asia. But why is it that you man always seem to have these population booms, just like you had all those orphans running wild in the streets, millions of orphans everywhere? Why do you man always seem to have these population booms, right? But it never sustains itself. What doesn't sustain itself is engineered. What sustains itself is natural. Anything engineered will not sustain itself. It will constantly need engineering. Nature does not require that. And this is why I believe that their births always decline and then something else pops up. And what's the next thing they're gonna do? What's gonna be the next pop up, guys? Alright. Watch when they perfect, like the proper perfect. Well, not even perfect. But watch when they roll out, like design it like proper, like them incubate like babies when you just plop. And I know they're gonna ease us into it because they already have the thingy for it. They've already got the science for it. They'll ease it in, and then people are gonna be buying shellless babies with no souls. But you know, we like to play pretend, I guess. Anyway, so that's not prehistoric time. That's medieval history. When we can actually track empires, wars, and population crashes. Africa doesn't have this. Even though Africa is the genetic root, its Y-lines remain branchy and diverse. No star clusters, explosions swallowing tens of millions in a millennium. Even though we have our big empires, even though we all share languages and all of this stuff, and yet we don't have that same thing. Strange. So the contradiction is, if hybrids, Neanderthal and Homo sapiens, were supposed to have happened 50,000 years ago, then why do the biggest rollout signatures of their Y-lines only appear in the last 1,000 years during empire building? And by empire building, I mean their empire building, okay? So like I said, how? If they're trying to tell us that the Neanderthals and Homo sapiens mated 50,000 years ago, why is it that when the Eurasian populations only seem to show these Neanderthal DNA fragments when these men are rolling out with their founding fathers and spreading their seed all over the gap in a way that is not naturally possible, especially in those times? In those times when babies couldn't even survive like that. Like, do you understand what I'm saying to you? There was a lot going on, especially in Eurasia. So, guys, come on, be for real, yeah? It makes it look less like a slow ancient process and more like a deliberate release cycle. The same hybrid template getting stamped into populations over and over again through dynasties, conquest, and resets. The timing is suspicious. Plagues, famines, wars, then boom, a new star cluster dominates. So, the weirdness is that the recent dynastic superlines all carry the same hybrid coding, and they all erupt in the same tight historical window, while Africa, the deepest root, never produces them. So if the official story was true, Neanderthal DNA entered Homo sapien genomes 50,000 years ago. And remember, if you lots know how the Neanderthals were, you know their features. I've broken them down a lot. If you don't, please grab my ebook, link in the bio, I believe it is on YouTube. Yes, it is. But you can go on my TikTok, everything. Link is everywhere. But yeah, I've broken down the features, videos. If you ain't got page yet, you can watch my videos on TikTok there. I've got a lot of videos as well, but you'll be able to sift through them. Okay. Now, that's what they want to say. So it happened 50,000 years ago. It's supposedly spread into all non-Africans. Light skin alleles, pale coding, yeah. So they said to have arisen, so the alleles, not populations, but the alleles itself. So that's how old they're saying that the pale skin is. So the pale skin alleles, so they couldn't even, they're saying that they didn't exist before 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, yeah. But it swept across Europe during the Neolithic and steppe expansions, which is obviously much more recently. So by that logic, by the Bronze Age, which is 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, Europe and Asia should already be full or visibly pale populations. So when the pale light skin alleles showed up, which is 5,000 to 10,000 years ago, if that was true, by that logic, 100% in the Bronze Age, which is 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, Europe and Asia should have to be pale populated like it is today. Yeah. However, what we actually see in history and art is ancient Greeks, Romans, Mesopotamians, Egyptians depict themselves as depict themselves and neighbors as brown or dark. Pale figures are rare, very rare, yeah? And when they're fingered, what are they? Barbaric, ape men. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Yeah? Now, in medieval Europe, pre-1100s, records still describe dark Britons, so Moors and Saracens and Ethiopians. Pale-coded populations are not the majority, yeah? It's only after 1100 to 1500 AD, so during the Crusades, Mongol conquest, Black Death, Renaissance, that the pale-coded populations suddenly appear in power and dominant. Yeah? That means the pale look wasn't widespread until very late, long after the supposed Neanderthal admixture event. Now, Neanderthal DNA wasn't just sitting passively in everyone outside of Africa for 40,000 years, which is what they want to try and tell us. That's what they want to try and say. That, oh, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals mated just before they went extinct. Also makes zero sense. Like, they were just fucking go out of the way, and then they said, okay guys, we're out now. Deuces. We're not gonna be sleeping with our women anymore at all. Burn them. We just want you, man. And guess what? The African women, who you already know, we're stingy with her now. We don't be, you know what I mean? We don't be Bonnie Blueing it out here. You ain't never heard of us Bonnie Blueing it out here. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Obviously, there's the lower levels. That's different. You know what I mean? Ain't knocking anybody's hustle, but I'm talking about, you know what I mean? Like, be for real. Which African woman's going to be out here laying with it? Guys, I can't believe they even tried to convince us of that. And anybody that believes that is crazy. And anybody that believes, oh, they were just out here mass raping people, also doesn't make sense. It also doesn't make sense, because it still shouldn't be so uniform. So even when I'm speaking on all these theories, guys, I'm speaking on them to really break down the science. So also for you to kind of figure it out for yourself and be like, bro, actually, hold on a minute, that don't even make sense. Like, use today's logic. Like, you don't need to be a genius. Just use everyday life, bro. Like, use everyday life. This is why I say I don't know how people ever believe that God ever put masculine on God. How? When does men ever birth anything? Like, beef. Anyway. All right. That's a whole nother topic. Now, with the Neanderthal DNA, it was spread in bursts during historical expansions and resets. So forget what they're trying to say about Neanderthal DNA was sitting there for 40,000 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just happened to spread across everybody that left Africa. People were waiting for you, bro. They were waiting for you at the barriers. As soon as you was there, Neanderthal men were just going to come jump on you. Okay. Anywho's. Yeah. That, where was I? Yes, so it was spread in bursts during historical expansions and resets. The very same star cluster dynasties, so Khan, Manchu, Unil, Sharif, that exploded in the medieval era. With each conquest, famine, or plague, older melanated populations were thinned, and the hybrid-coded Y-lit lines carrying Neanderthal fragments spread further. Pale skin didn't arise in deep prehistory. It was a visible byproduct of these expansions, finally becoming dominant only in the last 1,000 years, my brother. 1,000 years. Like I said, they're using bones to measure our timeline. So even if we use their bones, okay, we'll use your bones, guys. We'll use your bones. So 315,000 years, 1,000 years. 315,000 years, 1,000 years. 315,000 years. 1,000 years, and we're not seeing nothing. Like, no alarm bells ringing, guys. Yeah. Now, so the contradiction is they can't say everyone outside Africa got Neanderthal DNA 50,000 years ago, but they all still look dark for tens of thousands of years. The pattern is clear. Neanderthal DNA tracks with conquest-driven expansions and pale-coded populations only appear after these expansions reset the gene pool. So that prehistoric dating is a smokescreen. The real rollout of Neanderthal DNA and the pale phenotype tied to it happened much later, during the medieval or imperial period, when we actually see the star cluster lineages stamp their Y DNA across Eurasia. Right, bear with me one moment, guys. Just need to make sure we're still... Okay, still recording. Alright. Now, the timeline of the Neanderthal DNA and pale populations. So 50 to 40,000 years ago, the genetics claim Homo sapiens mixed with Neanderthals in the Levant or Eurasian area, yeah? All non-Africans supposedly inherit 2% Neanderthal DNA, but everyone still looks dark-skinned. History, so reality, yeah? No pale populations. All depictions of humans worldwide are dark or brown. No evidence of pale-coded groups at this time. So 10,000 to 5,000 years ago is a Neolithic Bronze Age. Genetics claim light-skinned alleles spread with farmers and steppe people. By Bronze Age, Europe should be pale. History or reality. Ancient Greeks, Mesopotamians, Egyptians, Harappans all describe themselves and neighbors as dark, golden, or brown. Pale types are rare, exotic, or outsiders. Europe described as melanated up to the Middle Ages. So 2,000 to 1,000 years ago. Classical early medieval. Genetics claim pale phenotypes already dominant across Europe or Asia. Non-Africans fully hybridized. The reality is, early medieval sources still describe dark Britons as Ethiopians in Britain, Saracens across Europe, or Byzantine and Moorish art equals, so the dark figures, yeah? Pale-coded masses still not visible, yeah? And that's 2,000 to 1,000 years ago. Now, 1,500 to 1,000 years ago, the medieval resets, genetics claim nothing major happens. Pale populations already stable. However, the reality is, here's where it exploded. The Unil star cluster in Ireland, 3 million men. Sayyid and Sharif clusters in Middle East, tens of millions. Manchu and Ying star cluster, 20 to 30 million men. Genghis Khan cluster, 16 million men. All within the same millennium. These dynasties stamped their Y DNA across Eurasia during wars, famines, and plagues. Now, the pale-coded dominance only becomes visible in art, portraits, and rulership after 1100 to 1500 AD. 500 years ago, the Renaissance or colonial age, genetics claim already pale for millennia, nothing to explain. But reality is, first-time pale populations become the dominant visible rulers. Paintings, portraits, aristocracies shift to pale-coded norm. Colonial expansion spreads the white phenotype globally. So this is the gap exposed, yeah? Mainstream genetics pushes Neanderthal admixture and pale sweeps tens of thousands of years back. But the evidence actually shows no pale-coded dominance until the last 1,000 years, my brother. So no pale-coded dominance until the last 1,000 years, coinciding perfectly with dynastic star clusters and empire resets. The conclusion is obvious, Sinai. Neanderthal DNA wasn't just ancient drift. It was spread in waves through conquest, engineered bottlenecks, and dynastic rollouts. Pale populations didn't naturally dominate until the medieval or colonial age. All the biggest alleles that change how people look, okay? So skin, eyes, hair are not 50,000 years old. They sweep in very late bursts, exactly when empires, famines, and plagues create a vacuum. That's what you would expect if a prepared stock was injected into a depleted population. So the Y-chromosome star clusters, or the rollout markers, with the Khan, Manchu, Ying, Unil, Sayyid, all in the same millennium, all in places of major upheaval. Each one is basically a Y-DNA franchise stamped across a region. That's the signature of an engineered or dynastic seeding, not just one man got lucky. right? The pale phenotype is late, I. The genetics say pale alleles existed, but the look only becomes dominant after these star cluster rollouts, right? No mass pale-coded populations until very recently, then an explosion. Africa's pattern is the control group. Africa's Y-DNA tree stretches branchy and old. No star clusters swallowing tens of millions. No ghost populations needed to explain huge gaps. That's exactly what you would expect in unrolled, unengineered population that, bro, is so annoying, yeah? Because yeah, even now, yeah, as I'm reading on my notes, like, I've got more questions that I want to go deeper into, yeah, that are like things that are popping up in my head because I'm like, wait, I want to, because I'm clocking things and I'm like, like I want to go do research and stuff like that. So it's like, even right now, I'm literally evolving. That's why I really encourage people to research, to learn, to ask questions, etc. And don't be afraid to question everything, even yourself. Don't be afraid to change what your theory is from one moment to. Don't be afraid of that, I. Because if you are, that's how you stay stuck and limited. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Why do you think they never want to update us? Why do you think it takes them so long to change things? Why? Because they want us stuck in the same timelines. No evolution. But the faster you question, the quicker you grow, the quicker you evolve. Yeah, you're not gonna, certain things you're not gonna enjoy as much as you used to, yeah? But you get me, other things you're gonna enjoy a whole lot more. Anyway, went off a little bit there. So, Africa's Y-DNA tree stays branchy and old. No star clusters swallowing tens of millions. No ghost populations needed to explain huge gaps. That's exactly what you would expect in an unrolled, unengineered population that simply keeps reproducing in place. The Out of Africa clock is an artifact. All those 50,000 years ago dates come from mutation rate assumptions, not direct fossil hybrids. If the rates are off, or there were resets, you can compress those timelines to just a few thousand years and it still fits the DNA patterns. Okay? So, when you line up the maps everywhere pale-coded groups appear, they're tied to warfare, forced mixing, and hierarchy. That's exactly the rollout mechanism for an engineered population, I. So, in my theory, yeah, it's a model, yeah. So at the end of the day, I still feel like when I'm speaking on these things, it clearly shows that it explains the whole ghost populations thing, it explains the late sweeps, okay, it explains the star clusters, and it matches the visible historical record, yeah, and explains why Africa looks completely different, right? So the academic version has to keep patching itself with ghosts, mysteries, to like, do you know what I mean? They love all of these. That's why they love an alien. That's why these men love an alien, bro. That's why these men love an alien. Because they need to to hold on to something, bro. Hold on to something to make sense of their existence. That, and to shout out to any of my, you know what I mean, my non-Africans that are watching this video that, are interested in the truth. You know what I mean? I know that I feel that there must be sometimes that sense, like, do you know what I mean? Like that nagging feeling deep down that's kind of like, wow, who am I? And we all question who we are, yes. But I feel like with pale races, it's even, if they're actually switched on and actually paying attention, right? They must because I couldn't imagine. Because I will be questioning. I'm too curious. And you can't scam me. I'm too curious. And I hate lies. I'm too curious. I would literally be thinking, I couldn't just sit there and take all the lies. I couldn't. And that's why, you know what I mean, I've got real followers. Because if you're non-African and you still manage to follow me and watch it, shout out to you. Big up yourself, because, you know what I mean? I was going to say niggas, but I don't want to encourage you to say it. Even though I know you probably wouldn't, but I don't know. But you know what I mean? I've got black people that won't even be bothered. Not even bothered. Don't give a damn. But anyway, this is the way it is. So, because they'll keep patching itself with ghosts and mysteries because it's trying to make a slow, random model fit a pattern that's clearly pulsed and deliberate. Okay? Once you stop looking at it through the random evolution lens and just ask, who was there? What happened? And what changed afterwards? When you go through the record region by region, you keep seeing the same 3-step cycle. So step 1, melanated majority plus a crisis. There's a long-standing diverse dark-skinned population, then something hits, a plague or a famine, war or invasion, climate shock or forced migration. And even though they want to put the climate stuff in history, which is why I put it down, because even though there's a lot of information that I'd be putting down or speaking on here that I don't agree with, and that's why I'd be saying my theories right after, yeah. But the reason why I touch on the number, because I don't want people to be thinking, oh, but this is what I saw, but I read this, because I want to break it down, because you will see certain things. But when I break it down to you, I bet when I break it down to you and you go back and you get those information, you're going to be like, more like, you're going to be able to see the bullshit more. You're going to be like, rah, sign smells fishy here. All right. So, step 1, melanated majority and plus crisis. So there's a long-standing diverse climate shock, forced migration. This massively reduces the population and wipes out many male lineages. It leaves a vacuum. Step 2, pale-coded minority enters. Right after the crisis, you see an incoming population that is paler and carries foreign alleles, has a tightly controlled Y lineage, arrives with new tech, religion, and farming. Yeah, all farming. But remember, even when it comes to the farming thing, like, I need you lots to they're farming. How about that? Yeah, they're domesticated, engineered animals. Yeah, but we've been farming. Like, I can't even believe it's even a thing. Like, that they love to put it out there. But remember, they started civilizations. They're the ones that they would. They civilized everyone. These men that were still throwing shit and piss out the windows recently, 500 years ago. These men are the ones that civilized everyone. Yeah. All right. Anyway. So now, because the local male population is gone or weakened, the incomings group male line expands explosively. Now, rapid phenotypic shift. Within a few generations, the regions, that's step 3, yeah? Rapid phenotypic shift. Within a few generations, the region's visible phenotype flips. The surviving woman's children start showing the newcomer traits. Alleles like the SLC24A5, SLC45A2, and HERC2 suddenly sweep. So these are the pale alleles and the straight hair, and pale alleles and the colored eyes, the mutated eyes, yeah? Old lineages disappear, the new group's Y DNA becomes dominant. It looks like a late sweep in genetics, but it's really a post-crisis replacement. Now, in Europe, dark hunter-gatherers plus plagues. Then it's replaced by Neolithic steppe farmer waves with light-skinned alleles. In Central Asia, Turkic or Mongol resets, and then you bring in the Khan and Manchu star clusters, okay? And those original, Central Asians were black. Go further into their history, you will see it. You'll be shocked and surprised, but you'll see it, all right? In North Africa, the Levant area, the repeated famines and plagues, pale-coded elites taking power. Now, Africa, by contrast, didn't go through the same kind of continent-wide bottlenecks. Plus monopolized male reproduction, so you don't see pale-coded injections taking over the same way. Yeah. Now, with the Bronze Age, the steppe expansions for local Neolithic farmers collapse from plague or famine. So this is 4,500 years ago. Yeah. Injection pale steppe herders result Indo-European languages plus pale-coded dominance begins. But with that 4,500 years ago steppe expansion, I feel like they're exaggerating the time, but maybe, With medieval Black Death, which was in the 1300s, 30 to 50% of Europe dies, especially the poorer classes. Surviving aristocratic pale-coded lines reproduce disproportionately. Result is sudden visible whitening plus consolidation of noble bloodlines. Now, in Central Asia, the Turkic expansion 500 AD onward, darker Scythian or Saka-type groups collapse. Injection, lighter-coded Turkic nomads, elite plus elite Y lines. Result, new pale-coded elite dynasties across Central Asia. Now, in the Mongol Empire in 1200 AD, entire regions depopulated by famine or war. Injection is the Khanid Y line, R1AQ, explosively spreads. The result is 16 million men today carry that clonal Y line. In the Manchu Qing lineage, 1600 AD, population depletion in Northeast Asia. Injection, pale-coded Manchu elite dynasty. Result, another star cluster, 20 to 30 million men today. In Middle East and North Africa, the Bronze Age collapse. In 1200 BC, darker Canaanite Egyptian-type populations devastated by famine and invasions. The injection is the pale-coded Sea peoples and early Indo-European migrants. Result, whitening of the Levant or North Mediterranean elites. Arab expansion in the 600 to 900 AD. Older Afro-Asiatic melanated populations of Arabia and North Africa depleted. The injection is new ruling elites, the Umayyad, Abbasid, etc., with pale-coded infusion from the Levant or steppe. The result is Arabic language dominance plus whitening of elite classes. Now, in the Ottoman period, in 1500 AD, we've got the slave trade plus plague depopulation in the Balkans. Injection, Turkish ruling class, lighter coded, seeding a dynastic lines across North Africa and the Balkans. In South Asia, Indo-Aryan expansion. I thought I had my AirPods